Writing code is a constant push and pull on your development skills. First, you write some code and test it to see if it works the way you intended. Then, as the project progresses, you discover ways to improve and change the code. This kind of rewriting is sometimes called refactoring. Regardless of how you define it, Visual Studio has refactoring tools to help you automate the process. I'll start by showing you the refactoring menu in Visual Studio. I'm in a C# project at the moment, and I have the book class open. These are the refactorings that are available for C#. Rename, encapsulate field, extract interface, remove parameters, and reorder parameters. If you look at a VB file and go to that same menu, you'll see it has exactly the same refactorings. There's also refactorings available for C++ and F#, and there's also some limited refactorings for things like XAML files and renaming controls on Windows Forms and Windows 10 applications. I'm going to concentrate on C# today and on the refactorings in the code window itself. So I'll start by switching back to the book.cs file. Actually, I wanted to switch back to the program.cs. I want to talk about renaming this variable. It's not a very good name. It's not descriptive. You notice when I select the variable that there's a gray box that shows up around it. There's also a gray box down on line 18 around the variable down there. So one of the ways that I can refactor this is just type in the new name here. This is a new feature in Visual Studio 2015. And after I type in the new name, a light bulb appears in the margin. And I can choose to show potential fixes. So it's saying that there's a possibility of doing a refactoring called rename B to book. I'll click on this preview changes, and I'll see that the only place that's going to be affected by this refactoring is in this program.cs file. And it's this line of code here is also going to get changed. That looks good to me, so I'll click on apply. I also can use that refactoring menu. Now, this is a completely different way of doing it. This pop-up window shows up here. This is rename book. Found 2 references in one file. I can also have it look in the comments. I can have it look inside strings. And I can have it preview the changes. Now you see the difference this time with that little dialog up there. Now the text is green, and when I'm changing it here, it's a live change. When I change it in line 13, it also changes it in line 18. Next, I'd like to rename the book class. So I'll move over to this book class. Now, there's 2 ways I can rename the book class. One of the ways of renaming the book class is to go over here to the book.cs file, do the same renaming I showed you a few minutes ago, invoke the light bulb, and rename. Now I renamed it here. There was multiple places that are using the book class. One of them's over here in this program.cs. And when I switch back over here, I see on line 13 that it changed it to the new type name, and also on line 20. I can go to line 20, choose book library, invoke the refactoring. That changed it here and on line 13. And if I go to the book.cs file, you'll see that it changed over here too. So you can go either direction. This is really nice, right? Because when you're working in the book class in code that's using it and you decide it should have been renamed, you can do it there without having to go over to the book.cs file. For my next refactoring, I'll look at one called extract method. I'll do that here in my math lib file. I wrote this method called calculate paint needed, and I've decided that this code here could be turned into a separate method. So I'll select these 3 items here, choose extract method, and it's using that green live editing. You'll see that Visual Studio changed line 17. It now says get area. Visual Studio figured out that the radius value, which is passed in as a parameter on line 12, also needs to be passed into this new method I'm creating. So it wrote that bit of code for me. And it fixed it up so it's assigning that value to the double area variable here on line 17. It also wrote a method for me on line 22. Now, if I don't like the name of this, I can type in the new name, and once again, you see that line 17 and line 22 are linked to each other. And when I dismiss that dialog, it throws away those changes. So let me do this one more time. Click here. This time I'll click on apply, and I'm done. I'll do a build just to make sure that nothing was broke. Next, I'll return back to program. And I want to look at this code here. There's a method on the book class called saveBook that takes a file path, it takes a Boolean value, and a date time. So if I look at this method over here in the book class, you'll see it's taking the file location, whether to overwrite the existing file, and what timestamp to put on the book. And you'll notice that there is a typo here. So there's a typo here and here. So I can show you that I can also fix parameters with new names. Like that. So let's go back to program.cs. What I want to do is move this Boolean and make it the last parameter. So I'll click on Save Book. Choose Reorder Parameters. Then select Bool and click the down arrow to swap places with the date time parameter. Click on Preview Reference Changes. It tells me all the places that it's going to change it up here. And I can also preview what it'll look like in the code in this dialog. I'll click on Apply, and you see that it changed it here. And on line 22, the Boolean variable is now on the end of the method. And of course, you know that if I go over and look at the book CS file, you'll see that the Boolean is now at the end. This is the whole point of refactoring, is that it automates this process and takes care of all the references in all the places in my code, including comments and other places where I'm using these names and using these parameters. For my last demonstration, I'd like to look at the extract interface refactoring. So I have this book class that contains a title and a price and the save book method. I've decided that these two properties should be extracted into a separate interface. Now keep an eye on this line up here. Right now it just says class book. So I want to remove these two items and pull them into the interface. I get this dialog that's suggesting the name of the new interface, iBook. It's suggesting where to put that in a file called iBook.cs. And then down here, it lists the three members of this type. Which of these three members do I want to pull out and put in the interface? So I want price and title, and then click OK. So there's my new interface. It's in this new file, iBook.cs. And if I go back to my book class, you see that it's implementing this iBook interface for me. And with that demonstration, I'll close this topic on refactoring. Overall, I'd say Microsoft has nailed the most common refactorings. If you want more refactorings, look into third-party tools like CodeRush or ReSharper.